Success. There's the exhaust manifold. And there we go. So we do have one bolt left to hold this shroud on, the shield. Oh, and I did put, where the dipstick tube was, I stuffed a little paper towel covering the hole up. I didn't want dirt falling in it. So we'll take that last little bolt off. There were two bolts. I told you I got all of them except for three. Well, there was only two. One of them I was seeing twice when I looked at it from the other side. So I was able to get to all of them with my air ratchet and an extension with a wiggle joint, except for the two that are directly behind the upper A-arm bracket on the frame. And I had to use this very fine tooth ratchet. It is super fine, and I was able to swing one click at a time with this thing. That's all I could do. That's all the room I had, and I used a deep socket. So this and a deep socket, one click at a time. I just had about that much wiggle room. Boom, 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 boom. So I got it loose enough I could turn the socket with my fingers. So I also went ahead, that long heat shroud there, it's got I think 4 bolts in it, or 4 nuts that hold it on. I went ahead and just popped that off real quick. It took less than a minute with the air ratchet, and because it sticks out over here a little bit and it just opens this area up a little more to get the manifold out. I don't think I could have slid it out without taking that off. So I took it off. You're gonna have to do some maneuvering around, twisting the manifold until you finally wiggle it out of here. It's a super tight fit, and I'm sure it's going to be super hard to get back in there. So now that it's out, we will take this bolt out, and then we can get to the starter finally. And I'm going to leave my gaskets just like that because they are being held, and hopefully they don't fall off. So I think they'll stick there, the exhaust manifold gaskets. So let's get this shield off, and then we can start undoing starter bolts right here. There it is in all of its glory. So it looks like we've got 2 bolts. Yeah, 2 bolts that hold it on. And we'll have to pop this little cover off. Oh, there's the exhaust manifold gaskets falling. So might as well pull those off. They look good. We'll reuse those. Okay. So we'll have to pop that off, but I think we can get it out. And so let me pop this little cover off here. Let's see. Get my finger down there. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a screwdriver. Let me get that off. I'll get this battery cable off, and then the solenoid wire, the one that energizes the solenoid. So undid the 2 bolts. Was able to get the starter out. Actually got it out through the top. Once I undid those 2 bolts from up here through here, I was able to get the starter out through here, and undid the wires, of course. So you've got, like I said, you've got the one that goes to the solenoid that energizes the solenoid when you turn the key, and you've got the big battery cable. So let's see what this thing does now. Okay. That is a bad starter. Let me flip it over. The solenoid's working. Starter motor itself is no good. The clunk is the solenoid working. See? It's driving it in there. Well, take that back. Solenoid still could be bad on energizing the starter motor. So let's test the starter motor. Not getting a good connection. Okay, so it's a bad solenoid. Starter motor works. Solenoid does not engage the starter motor. But if I do this, well, you saw. So I could replace the solenoid, but I'm just going to replace the whole starter, as hard as this thing is to get off. Alright, so we got our new starter. We're just going to test it. All good. Just test it quite a few times, make sure it's all good. And I was testing with the battery that was in the thing. So, all right. So now we start back together like it came apart. I won't video as much, but I'll show you some. If I run into any tips on getting it back together, I'll show you. Alright, new starter is in, and I've temporarily hooked the battery cable back up. We're gonna just see if it'll crank over before we go any further. It's probably gonna start. If it does, we're gonna kill it immediately because we don't have the exhaust manifold on it. There's nothing in the way. So should be okay, but we don't want it to run long. Start it up, and it sounded mean for a split second. I'll leave that open just in case. Got the keys in it. So now we just got to go back together with it. And it looks good, and it started. Just bumped the starter and it started. So we need to put this gasket back on, and then we'll have to snake the intake or the exhaust manifold back up in there. Actually, first thing we're gonna do, put this shield on there, then get the exhaust manifold up in there and the gasket. So let me get started on this. So, as hard as this manifold was to get out, it's harder going back in. But I finally got it back in, got all the bolts tightened, torqued down, and so we are good to go there. We just need to squeeze this heat shield back up in there, and it goes up like that. It's even got like a little arrow. I don't know if that tells you which way forward. I guess so. So we'll squeeze that up in there and get the bolts back in it. Exhaust shield in place with the 3 bolts. So now I've just got to put that heat shield back in place with the 4 nuts. And then I will get the little box of screws here. Got my 4 nuts for the heat shield. And I'll get them in place. Alright, got that heat shield in place. Now let's get this exhaust wiggled back into place. Alright, so got the exhaust back on. And got our oxygen sensors plugged back up. Make sure the connectors and wires go in their little grommets. Their holders. Like that one. So got all that plugged up. Got our heat shield in. Got those tightened back up. So we're done under here. All we've got left is our dipstick tube, which we'll need to feed down into here. We can pull our little rag out. So I'll feed that down in there, and then we just got to pop our little splash shields back on. All back together. Dipstick tube in, and this wire clips into the dipstick tube bracket, or a bracket that comes off the dipstick tube. So I've got it back in. Let's start it up. Let's see if you can see show you the mileage on this thing. Starts perfect. No maintenance required soon. 207,490 miles. Let's try it one more time. Sounds good to me. So that's it. Thanks for watching.